Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be talking about Brewmaster Monk. All right, it's a very simple tank, but it's also a very complicated tank at the same time. Now, I don't believe I've ever done a guide covering Brewmaster, so I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. This video might be a little bit longer. So, first things first, let's talk about our stat alignment and gear, okay? So, overall, as you can see, I'm not overly geared on my monk yet. I am able to push some high keys and do decent damage. I recently timed an 8, and I'm still keeping up with where I should be and able to live through all of the pulls, and that is definitely helping. So our gear is going to play a factor into our survivability, but at the same time, it's also not going to play a factor into our survivability. Okay. So a lot of what we're looking for is stat alignment. All right. The primary stats that you are looking for as a Brewmaster Monk is going to be critical strike and versatility. Those are the two best stats that we can have. And then mastery is not far behind them, but it is still about 3% behind, I believe. And then haste is just inherently not super great. It gives us a little bit faster cast time, but at the same time, not enough to where you want to stack it. We're not really at a point yet where we need to cast more to live. A lot of what we need is we need to be able to live. And that's where the crit and verse come in. The crit is giving us bonus damage, and the versatility is giving us increased healing as well as damage, which is where the bulk of our threat is going to come from. Okay. So at first glance, like it's super easy to be like, oh man, I have no idea like what stats. They all look good. They're all going to do a lot to help. But crit and verse are going to be the best solely based off the fact that they are what's helping us live longer. Especially since your critical strike play does play into your healing. And a big part of our rotation is making sure that we're taking advantage of our self healing. Even if you are at 100% health, you will still use all of your heals as often as you can get the instant cast and as often as it is working for you. I'll get more into that with the rotation, but that in and of itself is going to benefit because crit is going to give us good healing, which is going to give us better survivability, which is going to help us out with our stagger rate. All right. So all in all, hey, crit and verse, that's what we're looking for. All right. So let's get into the defensives of a Brewmaster Monk. So Brewmaster is very unique. They have this ability. It's called stagger. All right. So you can stagger a certain percentage of the incoming damage. And like right now, I'm at 54%. So 54% of my incoming damage is going to be staggered. And what that means is it's instead of taking a whole bunch of damage up front, 54% of that damage is going to be dealt to me over time. Now, again, you can only take so much. You have your green, your red, and your yellow stagger bars. And if it's in the green, you're good. You're not going to die. You can run around. You can do what you need to do. You're chilling. When it hits yellow, it's starting to get full and it's starting to get to a point where, like, hey, you need your healer. You need to get healed up. You need to be healed through this incoming damage, and you need to do something to drop off your stagger bar. If it hits the red, that is when you cannot stagger anything else. You're done. That's it. If your healer cannot keep you up, then you're going to fall over. Now, given that Brewmaster Monk has the lowest health pool of any tank, this is super important that we do not ever let our stagger get into the red. Now, there are a couple ways that you can drop off your stagger and keep it under control. You can use your Purifying Brew. All right, it's going to clear 50% of your stagger damage, and it's going to heal you for 25% of that damage cleared. So if you're at 50% stagger, it'll drop you to 25%, and then it will heal you for 25% of your health. And because of the way stagger works, is it can be healed away. So any overhealing that goes into a monk feeds into their stagger bar. So basically, when you heal that 25%, you're at 50% stagger, you drop to 25, you're at 100% health. Now you've just put 25% of that damage back in your stagger, which can again drop it down even lower, and it does lots of help. Now, with Purifying Brew, yes, it does a lot to help, but if there's just so much damage coming in and you blow through both of these stacks on cooldown and you're still sitting in the yellow, you're still not happy about where you're at, we have Black Ox Brew. What this is going to do is it's going to basically reset the cooldowns for our brews, and it's going to refill our energy bar, which is going to allow us to use Vivify and Expel Harm. So, stagger in and of itself, it slows down the damage coming in. It means we're not taking as much damage, but it has to be controlled. So, it is an active defensive that must be controlled at any given time. All right. Now, next up, we'll move into Diffuse Magic. So, basically, Diffuse Magic is going to reduce the magic damage taken by 60%. All right. So, any magic damage, like especially in places like halls, places like Dawnbreaker, and places like Priory and Ecodome, which is half of our dungeon mix, you have got to make sure that you're using diffuse magic when interrupts are down, or if you know that something's not going to be interrupted. Non-interruptible magic damage, we've got to be using our diffuse magic on cooldown almost, and make sure that you're timing it. If you know that you can survive the magic damage, it's not really going to hurt, you don't need to use your diffuse magic. But if you're pushing a key and you're not really sure whether or not you can live through the pool, if you're not really sure whether or not you can do this, that, or the other, go ahead and use your diffuse magic. If there's just a lot of casts coming in all at one time, and you're like, I probably can survive this, but it's gonna hurt. Use your diffuse magic, reduce that magic damage coming in, and make it work for you. All right. Next up, we have Celestial Brew. All right, this is another thing that we can have the cooldown reset with our Black Ox Brew. Primarily, you want to use your Black Ox Brew in relation to Purifying Brew, but if you're in an oh shit moment, you can use Celestial Brew, or you can use it for your Celestial Brew just to get that off. Now, what this does is it gives you an absorb. All right, so essentially you get an absorb shield for a certain percentage of, I believe it's your attack power, if I remember correctly. But it's an absorb shield, and it will vary based off of what's going on. And it will also increase as you're reducing your stagger. So if you're at a point where you're fixing to use your brew to reduce your stagger, pop your celestial brew, purify your purify your stagger twice, reset your cooldown, and then you're good to go. Now you have that again. It makes it a very strong defensive. It makes it very strong for us with a low health pool, and when you're coming into contact with a shit ton of damage that you're just having to deal with because you got to figure it out. Celestial Brew is going to be one of our strongest defensives. All right. So next up, we have Fortifying Brew. Basically, this is a 15% damage reduction and health increase. This is something that you want to use if you ever hit a point where you don't have anything else to do and you can't do anything about the incoming damage. Now, Fortifying Brew, you do want to use it very, very carefully because it is a 6-minute cooldown. It does do a lot to help us, but it's not something that you can really afford to have on every pull of every dungeon. All right. So you need to be smart about your use it, kind of use it situationally. There's a lot of melee coming in. Hey, we accidentally butt pulled when I wasn't ready, and we've got shit coming from all directions. I can't survive this. Go ahead and use that fortifying brew, then clear off your stagger, get yourself reset, get your absorbs going. Use those 15 seconds to really set yourself up for what you need to do next. All right. Then next up, we have our dampen harm. All right, so this is going to reduce all damage taken by 20 to 50% for 10 seconds, with larger attacks being reduced by more. This is really, really good when you have multiple ad packs on top of each other and you've got that one guy who's just doing so much more damage. That's when dampen harm is going to help us the most because we get a guaranteed 20% from everybody else. And then that one elite who is just doing ridiculous damage to us is going to get reduced by 50%, which will 100% change everything. All right. So next up is going to be our weapon of order and our invoke Nizea, our Black Ox. So these can be used in a defensive capacity, but you want to use them together. They share a 2-minute cooldown. Well, they don't share a 2-minute cooldown, but they both have a 2-minute cooldown. All right, so for 30 seconds, your mastery is increased. Your keg smash cooldown is reset instantly. Enemies hit by keg smash or rising sun kick take 8% increased damage, and basically you're you're just doing a lot to help you. Now, if we look at what does that actually do for our mastery? So every time you're hit by a melee attack or hit blackout, you gain stacking 18.6 increased dodge chance until your next successful dodge. So basically, we're getting a bonus dodge, which is why this is playing to our favor as a defensive. We're also getting a damage increase, which is going to play into our favor as well with doing other things. All right. And then summoning our axe, or excuse me, summoning our ox. All right. It lasts for 25 seconds. It stomps every time you cast Purify, and it damages all enemies. All right. While it's active, 40% of the stagger damage is staggered by the Black Ox, and it's is healed for 100% of your purified stagger. So essentially, what this does is it is taking stagger damage for you, and it is helping you not to just blow up on your stagger charges, and then you don't have to do as much to deal with your stagger. You don't run the risk of hitting that red cap and then having to figure out how are you going to survive and what are you going to do. All right. So with that being said, these two are pretty much going to be on pull, big pull defensive that you want to hit every single time that you make a big pull and every single time that you do anything and everything that may or may not kill you just out of melee. So you've got to be very, very careful with how you use them and make sure that you are using them sparingly. If it's a small pull, probably don't want to use them. But for your bigger pulls, definitely recommend that you have those two out as soon as you get in and you get set up as a part of your opener. Before we go into the actual attack rotation that we're gonna do, I want to go ahead and go into talents. Go ahead and show you guys these talents. So I have two separate talents. One's for raid, one's for Mythic Plus. However, I did discover last night that Mythic Plus is working just fine in both normal and heroic raid. So you really could just run the one talent build and be set. But I did want to go ahead and show my talents. If you guys want to copy them over, this is what I've been using. This is how I'm doing things. The only thing that I will note on here is you do have a couple of options that you can swap out. You can swap to special delivery in the spec tree. All right. There's not much of a change there. However, if let's say we go ahead and make this swap, we're gonna talent out of these two and we're gonna go over here and we're gonna make sure that we take these two talents. I don't know why I did 3 talents. That was weird. All right, so make sure you're doing this because you want to have Breath of Fire or you want to have Rushing Jade Wind because we need to have 100% uptime on them for threat generation and AoE attack. All right. Personally, I prefer this just because I find it is easier to play around and it's easier to work with. All right. Now, let's get into our rotation. So the rotation for the attack rotation for a Brewmaster Monk is actually very, very simple. All right. So it also depends on cooldown, so it does get easier. All right. So you always want to have Exploding Keg on cooldown. All right. No matter what, Exploding Keg is going to be on cooldown every pull. You're going to use it on cooldown. All right. So you're going to use your Exploding Keg. Then you're going to, on your primary target, Rising Sun Kick, Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, and then you can Tiger Palm to get the resets, and then you're gonna go back into Blackout Kick, and you're gonna use your second Keg Smash. You do not want to use Keg Smash unless you have the damage bonus that you're gonna get from Blackout Kick. All right, I know that sounds weird. I know it's a little weird, but you do want to make sure you're doing that. The other thing is you want to precast your Rushing Jade Wind, and you want to keep Rushing Jade Wind at 100%. Basically, you want to every 5.3 seconds you should be pressing Rushing Jade Wind to keep that 100% uptime that you need. All right. In general, the rotation is pretty simple. Rising Sun Kick on cooldown, Blackout Kick, and then Keg Smash on cooldown. In single target, we're going to Blackout Kick and we're going to Tiger Palm. And at which point your Keg Smash, it doesn't really matter if you have your buff or not. You just kind of use it on cooldown. But in AoE situations, we're always going to Keg Smash with Blackout Kick. All right. So it's going to look something like this. All right. So I'm going to precast, going to do my Keg Smash, and then I got my buff from that. Keg Smash. Go ahead and do that. Reset a cooldown. Keg Smash. All right. This is up again. I'm going to hit that. Keg Smash. And we're pretty much just rolling on. Pretty much if it's not on cooldown, it should be on cooldown. And as often as it comes off of cooldown, we want to be casting it again. All right. Now, there are some situations where you're not necessarily going to have a Keg Smash with your Blackout Kick. At that point, you can go ahead and use your Tiger Palm. Situationally, you want to be smart. Okay. Now, if you're going to mix in the defensives, again, you have to be smart with how you're going to do it. You have to plan ahead with your defensives. But the two things that you are going to do as often as you can is you're going to expel harm as soon as you have 3 charges to go with it. You don't want to waste it on a 1 or 2 charge. Wait till you have 3 and then expel harm. And every time you Rising Sun Kick, you want to Vivify. All right. Now, the reason why you want to do that is because if you can keep yourself at 100% health and stagger majority of the damage, then you can clear your stagger stacks with your Vivify and with your Expel Harm. This definitely helps because the lower stagger that you have, the more damage you can take. And if you can keep and maintain your stagger, you can continue to pull. But as soon as your stagger gets out of control, you have to stop and you have to wait to get it back under control. And then you take away from your defensive uptime, your attack uptime, and you have to deal with your stagger. And that's where it does get a little bit interesting and rough, and you kind of have to improvise. Most starting pulls are going to cause you to they're going to cause you to go insanely high on stagger. That is okay. I have found that in most situations you are not precasting defensives, so it's not that big of a deal. And a lot of people say that the opener is insane because most pulls, our opener is going to look something to the effect of we're going to precast Rushing Jade Wind and then exploding. We're going to Exploding Keg, Rising Sun Kick, Blackout Kick, Keg Smash. So we're going to use our Weapons of Order and our Black Ox. And we're going to go back to Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, Rising Sun Kick. Then you're going to Expel Harm. You're going to Vivify, Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, Rising Sun Kick, Vivify, and you don't get any downtime the entire time that you're in combat. And then when you try and throw in defensives that you're having to react to, that's where you get people talking about a 32 button opener, is because now all of a sudden it's exploding keg, and then Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, Weapons of Order, Black Ox, Rising Sun Kick, Vivify, Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, Expel Harm, and then your Vivify, and now we're Celestial Brew, and then we have to use Purifying Brew, and then we have to use our Dampen Harm, and then we're back into our Keg Smash, and our Rising Sun Kick, and our Vivify, and it just keeps going on, and you do not have the luxury of downtime. If you ever find yourself with nothing to do as a Brewmaster Monk, then something is wrong, and you're either about to die or you're about to lose aggro to whoever the highest DPS is. That's really just how it works. All right. But all in all, it is a super fun tank, super simple once you do get a hang of it, and once you actually get that feeling of I need to do this, now I need to do this, now I need to do this. Every GCD is accounted for. Once you get that, it does become a lot simpler and it is a lot easier to keep up with. So if you guys have any questions, if you like this video, give me a like, throw a subscribe. If I left something out or if you want to keep something else open, those talents, check them out, see if they'll work for you. Or if you want to make some of the changes, if you want to do some other things, by all means. But definitely let me know if you guys like this video in the comment, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Have a good one. Later.